How's it going, Laser Bruce? It's Bobby Sixkilla. Welcome back to Choices That Matter, and the sun went out. I know we had quite a bit of a hiatus from this one, but we are back finally. I'm just trying to catch up on all the games that we've got to get to, and all the ones that we've done impressions on that I want to keep pushing through. Still waiting for a graphics card so I could finish Yakuza Like a Dragon. Let's just get back into it, shall we? So to recap. We are now with Umi, the kid that is a potential sacrifice to stop the sun going out, and he's just had a premonition, potentially, about the next time the sun went out. Did he just make another prophecy? And we're in Turkey, I believe? I think so, yes, she said. She sat down, facing me. What do we do with this information? I tried to think through the implications of telling the world that our days were numbered. Literally. Closing my eyes, I saw mass panic and riots, hoarding, fighting, more governments collapsing, mass migration, and war. We keep it a secret, I said. At the same time, as Penny said, we put it online. I laughed. Penny didn't. Can I tell my boss first? Why not, she said. Who'd you even work for? They don't have a proper name, I admitted. She frowned at me. What is it then? Some kind of research institute? Charity? The CIA? Yeah, one of those. Oh, crap. Hang on. No, I said. Nothing like that. My employer is... It's money incarnate. They keep me on a long leash because of all the chaos of the sun outages is beneficial for the big-name client. But the absolute end of the sun would be bad for business. She turns to look out the window rather than facing me and addresses her remarks to the view. There have been so many secrets and lies and cover-ups, she said. I just can't stand adding one more. Moti, I said, please investigate strategic places to release this information and advise us how to continue. Yes, teacher. Does your device know how to analyze international political and cultural trends? Penny asked. He's this kind of sentient internet? Except Moti's kind. Fine, she said. I'll be honest. I could really use some sleep. Let's keep the secret until tomorrow. Sounds good to me, I admitted. I laid awake for what felt like forever, trying to scrape together enough knowledge from all my travels to decide the best course of action. It was a guilty relief to know that the decision really belonged to Penny, and not to me. General Resources Inc., the company's client, would be pleased. I woke up and discovered I'd overslept, and we were already running through Istanbul. Penny apologized, saying that she thought I needed to sleep. Umi had dark circles under his eyes, but he was smiling. Teacher, I've completed my assessment, and decided on the timing and order of the spread of Umi's prediction. Do it, said Penny, but be careful that it doesn't give away our location. Moti's screen went blank as it began spreading the crucial information throughout the world. It was still blank as we drew close to Istanbul's central station, glad that our journey was over at last. I stood at the window with my bag ready to go, searching the station platform for Etienne's face. Instead, I saw Dolores. Penny, my supervisor's here. Don't let her see Umi. We need to hide from your boss? Penny asked me. Yes, I said. I'll distract Dolores. Umi tried his best to squeeze under the bunk beds, and I realized Moti was missing from my wrist. Umi, I said, this is very serious and we don't have time for lingering farewells. Give me Moti right now. He whimpered and curled his body around Moti. Penny knelt beside him as the train came to a complete halt. I'm so sorry, Umi, but it's not safe for us to stay with Moti. The boy shook his head, clinging to Moti with both hands. Let Penny get Moti, she's his mother. I tried to hide my impatience as Penny talked softly to Umi, and Umi acted as if he didn't hear her. Outside the door I heard the other passengers disembarking, and then silence as we were left alone. Penny, I said. She took a deep breath, apologized to Umi one more time, and yanked Moti from his hands, passing my device to me as Umi howled with grief. I'm sorry, I said. Goodbye, Umi. Goodbye, Penny. I rushed off the platform, spotted Etienne and grabbed him, pulling him with me as I headed to the spot I'd seen Dolores. Umi's on the train with his mother, I said. My supervisor's on the platform. I need to keep them separate. Understood, he said. Where should I go? Protect Umi. Isn't he an orphan? Etienne asked. Good to see you, by the way. Adopted, I said. I have his mother's phone number, and I know when the sun will go out again. Then I'm staying with you, said Etienne, if that's alright. Absolutely, I said. Help me distract Dolores. Sure. We made our way across the platform to where Dolores stood, looking annoyed. Her long hair was tangled by the wind, and I suddenly remembered how much she enjoyed using her height to intimidate me. I greeted her, circling around to stand on her other side, so she wasn't facing the platform anymore. Hello, said Etienne. Dolores raised her eyebrows at me, ignoring the hand Etienne held out for her to shake. What took you so long, she said to me. And since when did you mix business with pleasure? Etienne is Professor Sol's son, and a park warden. Our investigations often overlap. I see, said Dolores. It wasn't an apology, but it was as close as I was ever likely to get. Come on then, said Dolores. I booked us a hotel. Just like old times, I said. But you got a car waiting too. I hired a truck, said Etienne. His voice was perfectly calm. Too calm. He knew Dolores hadn't warned me she was coming. Dolores cleared her throat. Yes, I have a car. 2-seater, I'm afraid. Ditto, said Etienne. We'll go with Etienne. An hour later, the three of us sat together in the hotel's restaurant. Dolores scowled at Etienne, and Etienne met her rudeness with bland good humour. I swung wildly between amusement and annoyance. You know why I'm here, of course, said Dolores. Even before you started draining accounts to pay the Mafia, your spending was prodigious. Etienne raised an eyebrow. I'm curious, Dolores. How did you get to Istanbul from the States? My jet, she said smoothly, daring him to comment on her hypocrisy. That sounds convenient, said Etienne, before I could get a word in. How'd you even find me, I asked. Not that I was hiding, but you just showed up. Your tracker, of course, she said. Etienne's cool deserted him. He turned pale with fury and clenched the handle of his coffee cup so hard I expected it to shatter. Dolores reached across the table and tapped Moti, giving me an odd feeling that I'd been betrayed by my device. I'm sorry I didn't warn you, teacher. Dolores jerked back her hand and stared at Moti. Since when do emoticons initiate conversation, let alone apologize? Etienne shot me a swift glance of warning. Took me forever to teach it that. Realistic, isn't it? Indeed, said Dolores slowly, her eyes never leaving Moti. She took off her own emoticon and laid it on the table. How about we swap devices for a few days? It'd be good for them to get exposure to different owners, don't you think? No! I belong to teacher, not to you. Dolores jerked her head around and stared at Moti, her expression a mixture of confusion and wonder. I shrugged. I don't think they're programmed for multiple owners. I was starting to wonder if Moti was more unique than I'd initially thought. Dolores pressed her lips together, and I knew she was reining in her temper because of Etienne. Well, she said finally, I've had a long journey. Excuse me. She strode away, and Etienne finally relaxed. I'm so glad you're here, we said in unintentional unity, and laughed. He leaned forward. There's something I think you should see at the Hagia Sophia, a famous building here in Istanbul. I'm not sure if you want her along. It's to do with my father's diary. Should we go now? Yeah. Dolores caught us at the door, her eyes narrowed at us in suspicion. Going somewhere? Why don't you join us? Etienne said smoothly when he realized I didn't have a response. The three of us hurried from the hotel and piled into a taxi, rather than splitting up again. The Hagia Sophia was stunning and enormous. Etienne smiled at my gaping, and I had Moti take photographs for me as we approached. Several groups protested outside, a Christian group claiming the Muslim building for Jesus, a Muslim group asking to have their mosque restored to them, and others with motifs of the sun tattooed on their forehead. Oh God, I muttered, another sun cult. Can we get a move on, Dolores asked? I've seen old buildings before, you know. Etienne led us inside and through the museum. An earthquake damaged the building in 1344, Some parts collapsed and had to be rebuilt later that century. The symbol I saw was in that section there. Do you see it? About 10 feet up. The stone in the shadow there. I see it. I don't, I admitted. Moti, can you take a photo for me? And please use silent mode from now on. It's too far away, teacher. Do I look like a zoom lens to you? Here's a copy of the symbol. Okay. I felt my breath catch in my throat. I've seen the symbol before, but where? Then it suddenly came to me. It was in Professor Sol's house on the day of his murder. I had the impression that he had found the strange symbol relevant to the sun going out. Professor Sol was investigating the same symbol. I was about to ask Moti what Sol's connection was to the Hagia Sophia when I realized the truth. There wasn't one. The symbol wasn't just in Turkey. It meant something throughout the world. Well, said Dolores, what does it mean? Professor Sol found out something and Etienne is retracing his path. Is this why you're in Turkey? Dolores asked me. I was following leads, yes. I said. Did you have another lead for me? Yes, she said. Walk with me. We followed her obediently back to the closest taxi rank. We know there is a fake Italian astronaut, said Dolores, but we don't know why. Another cover-up, I said. They're going around at the moment, as every government in the world is trying to keep their people from revolting, and many of them aren't succeeding. No, said Dolores, it's more than that. If he's still alive, then where is he? If he's dead, then where is his body? What happened to him? Where is the real astronaut? And why is the one man worth such a lot of trouble to conceal? Okay, I said, so we try to find the real astronaut. Yes and no, she said. What we need is data about what happened on the International Space Station. That means going to NASA. Hey Moti, ever want to see a real rocket? This will be such fun. Dolores stared at Moti again before catching herself. There's no point wasting time, she said. I'll let my team know to expect us in a couple of hours. Great, I said, looking forward to understanding everyday conversations without needing Moti to constantly translate. And what will you be doing? She asked Etienne. I winced at her lack of tact, but Etienne cast me an apologetic look, rather than a look of annoyance. Actually, I have a lead here in Istanbul that I'd like to investigate. Oh, I said, suddenly thinking of Umi again. I'm sure you'll meet your contact. We dropped Etienne at the hotel and picked up our things. I managed to steal a few short moments with Etienne, and he showed me his transcript of Professor Sol's encoded diary, on paper, of course. Typical Etienne. The symbol from the Hagia Sophia was there, but we couldn't tell why. I'm not going to find Umi, he said, although I'd appreciate his mother's phone number, if that's alright. I'm looking for the children of Gaia, to help make sense of the work I've done on my father's diary so far. I hope there are answers in there, I said. All my other leads are pointing to a certain type of person, someone worthy to be sacrificed, and before the southern hemisphere's winter solstice, when the sun will vanish for good. Etienne's eyes widened. That's not long, and a sacrifice? Really? I know, I said. Poor Umi is terrified. He thinks he has to sacrifice himself to save the world. The park warden sighed and nodded. I'd better get going too, he said. And you too. Wait, I stopped him. There's something else. Tintin. Santiago's dead. He was turned on by his own people and the mafia. Sharon saw it. Etienne turned white as a sheet, and then slid down the wall to sit on the floor. I followed him, putting an arm around my friend. So it's done, he crowed. My father is avenged. He would be proud of who you are, I murmured, and so am I. Me too. I sat with him in silence until Moti warned me that Dolores was calling to ask what was taking so long. I knew that if I didn't leave, she would come in. Stay in touch. I returned to Dolores with a lump in my throat that her rented Ferrari did nothing to ease. She drove us to one of Palmero's airports in a thoughtful silence. The jet made the Ferrari look like a second-hand skateboard. It was a glorious luxury vehicle, and I was surprised Dolores had even bothered renting a hotel. It featured several bedrooms, one of which was already occupied by Dolores' favourite henchman. They were sleeping, so Dolores took the wheel. With very few planes flying, it didn't take long for her flight plan to be approved, and then we were off. Flying home at last. My co-pilot is Dagger, and her partner is Crank, Dolores told me. Okay, I said, choosing not to comment on the obviously fake names. I left her alone in the cockpit. Teacher, turn on the news. I turned on the in-flight television, and stood staring at a visibly shaken newsreader reporting on a coordinated attack on NASA itself, a combination of hacking and bombs. Dolores shouted from the cockpit, "Are you seeing this?" "I'm watching the news now," I shouted back. "Several artifacts of enormous historical importance were also destroyed," said the newsreader. "The primary and backup databanks were completely destroyed, suggesting that NASA's confidential information was the true target of the attack." I couldn't hear anything else after that. Our last lead was hidden somewhere in NASA. Now it was all gone. "No," I whispered. "Why? What were they hiding? And what would we do now?" Arc 10 completed. Okay, begin Arc 11 too. How many arcs can there possibly be? The rumblings of the jet engines, which felt like they were just under my head, woke me from a fitful dream. "Feeling alright, mate?" I groaned and opened my eyes to see Sharon leaning over me. She was steadying herself by bracing her hands against the bulkhead. "Shazza!" I jumped out of bed and embraced her warmly. "It's good to see you." She laughed as we sat on the bed beside each other. "You look rough, mate." I sighed. Our lead was blown up with NASA, and now there's nothing I can do about it. I'm just sweet. I turned to her. "Not that I'm complaining, but what are you doing here? And when did we pick you up?" I asked. "About the same time as everyone else." "Everyone else? Huh? I missed something, didn't I?" I asked Sharon, looking around at the people milling about. "Mate, you missed most of it," she laughed, clapping my shoulder. Apparently, while I was asleep, Dolores had been collecting people. They were both familiar faces and strangers in the comfortable interior of the jet. They were chatting easily amongst themselves. The only person who seemed to be alone was Dolores in the cockpit. That being said, Crank and Dagger, kidnappers, spies, and lackeys to Dolores, were standing in the open cockpit door. They seemed to be in a serious discussion. In unison, they looked up and nodded at me in greeting. I swallowed and nodded back. Nice to know they were on our side. Etienne was standing with Miss Inamoto, or Matron, the woman who ran the secret base of scientists in Japan, back before Santiago blew it up. They were happily exchanging stories. She leaned against him and chuckled, her composure clearly unaffected by recent events. Petrus, our friendly neighborhood scientist and philanthropist, had taken up a corner, writing notes and getting advice from whoever would listen, while watching those around him talk. "My friend," called Petrus when he noticed me. "How are you?" I smiled. "I'm well, and you? Did you find out much about the children of Gaia?" He nodded, laughing. "I learned a lot from them," he said before being pulled into another conversation. He nodded apologetically at me, silently indicating we would continue to chat later. Next to Petrus was a man I hadn't seen in a long time, Wong, the Chinese etherite. He was in a long coat, and the tall blonde woman next to him also had a hint of Asian features in her face. "Wong," I called out to him. He beamed when he saw me, and actually made his way to me and hugged me. I hugged him back, laughing. "It's good to finally see you again, you look well." My smile faded from my face. "Last time I saw you, you were being hunted by Santiago's cult." Wong nodded grimly. "It was a good thing I took the etherites and left. Number 5 before it was blown up. I wish I took everyone else too." "You couldn't have known," I said to him, memories of the dead flashing to my mind. That was only one of Santiago's many assassination attempts. He had a pained look on his face. "I survived each time, but many of my friends didn't." I nodded grimly, not knowing what to say. Wong glanced back at the young woman who he was with. "Anyway, let's catch up later. I'm in the middle of something." I agreed, and he went back to the woman. I wondered if she was an etherite too. On the opposite side of the end of the cabin, a woman I didn't know was talking closely with a young male friend. She was dark-skinned and beautiful. I watched them carefully, knowing to be cautious of strangers by now. "The woman is Miss Farah." My companion next to me whispered, noticing my look. "She's with the Children of Gaia, or the COG group. Interesting woman." I looked around one more time, open-mouthed, at a gaggle of people around us. It appeared that, while I'd been sleeping, Dolores had been racking up some serious miles. When Dolores finally left the cockpit and walked over to me, everyone moved around to form a large circle, as if expecting a group conversation. Glancing into the cockpit, I noticed that Dagger was in the pilot seat now. Is this the part of the movie where the team comes together to save the world? You could say that, my friend, Petrus laughed. Each one of us has been trying separately for a while. It's time we all combine our efforts. Agreed, Matron nodded, rubbing her hands together. The Etherites and the children of Gaia seemed a lot less excited, occasionally shooting adversarial looks at each other. I still don't believe why the ether-believing quacks are here, said one of the children of Gaia. Quacks, shot back at Etherite. This coming from the crazies who sacrifice people. Rich. Enough, Miss Farah bellowed. We'll get nothing done if everyone insists on behaving like infants. Miss Farah is right, Wong said after a moment of awkward silence. We have to work together now, regardless of how we feel about each other. Everyone nodded in agreement, some more reluctantly than others, but the important thing was, they nodded. I said nothing, looking at Dolores, and waited. Finally, she sighed. While you were having a little meltdown, dooming the world before it ended, I set to work, she said. It took some managing, but the good news is, I've successfully gathered the best of us to solve this little problem. Little problem indeed, Wong interrupted. Before you go on, for those who haven't met her, this is Satine Lewis. He gestured at the tall blonde. She's an exceptional pilot with a background in guerrilla warfare. I'm quite useful, she added, smiling wickedly, although apparently I'm third in line to fly this gorgeous jet. On that note, Miss Farah said, after the general hubbub of hellos had died down, this young man is my associate, Chase Price. You and I had the same idea. Chase is a world-class engineer over several disciplines. Also quite useful. Chase winked at Satine. Well, none of you would be here if you weren't useful. Dolores waved off the conversation. When our NASA lead was sabotaged, we were in desperate need of a new lead. According to my employees' reports, the groups represented in this room have come closer than anyone else to solving the sun problem. Wait, I said, shaking away my drowsiness. Good news? What's the bad news? Bad news is, we're all on the company's complication matrix, she snapped. Even me. After all these years of service. Don't worry, I've been leaving back doors for myself ever since I started. Let them just try and stop me. I rubbed my forehead again. It wasn't good. As much as I had my issue with the company, their resources and protection were always useful. Now not only were we on our own, but we were being hunted by our former employees. You're the lead in NASA? Asked Wong suddenly. He looked as if he was deep in thought. Yes, but it's no use now that NASA's blown off the map. Keep up, said Dolores dismissively. Why would anyone blow up a space agency? Asked Petrus, musing. Was this to cover up the missing astronaut again? What's in the NASA service that's worth so many lives? The real question is, who did it, said Matron. The amount of coordination needed to destroy all of NASA's backup servers at the same time is insane. My guess is Santiago's cult did it, said Miss Farah. The leader might be dead, but he still has his believers. Wong looked ill, and I knew how he felt. I'd been so relieved that Santiago was dead, I hadn't thought about what remnants of his cult might be up to. Doesn't matter now, interrupted Dolores. What's gone is gone. We must focus our efforts on what we still have. But what if it isn't gone? We all turned to Wong at that. What do you mean, I asked him. Well, you know how competitive the Chinese, Russian and American space agencies are, don't you? When no one said anything, Wong continued. When I was in the army, I was friends with an intelligence officer. Sometimes when we get drunk together, he'd tell me stuff he shouldn't, like how the 3 space agencies would hack and steal each other's data all the time. We all look at each other at that moment. I felt a flutter of hope in my chest. Are you saying there's a chance that NASA's secrets are still out there? Cutted Dolores, her expression calculating. So NASA's data, the parts everyone tried so hard to cover up, might have survived after all. And its rival space agency servers, Matron said, nodding. That actually makes perfect sense. If it's true, we have to get that data, I said. Whatever they're hiding might help us understand the sun's problem. I could see the scientists nodding in agreement. But where do we go, Russia or China? Asked Miss Farah. I have connections in Russia, Petrus answered immediately, rubbing his hands together. It won't be easy to get access to a top secret data they don't want to admit they have, but it'll be easier than China. I disagree, Matron held up her hand. The geopolitical situation in Russia has deteriorated significantly over the last few months. We'll be less likely to be thrown in jail or blown up by terrorists if we go to China. As happens with highly intellectual people, the argument went on. Dolores as well, as I watched passively as the scientists and theorists dueled it out. Sharon put in her 2 cents, mentioning that she knew someone in Russia that could help. She pleaded the case for that side. Etienne was, as always, opposite to Sharon. He preferred the relative safety and stability of China. At last, Dolores put up her hand. We're evenly split, she announced when everyone was silent. That's fine. We can part ways and do both. We have a private jet. We might as well use it. As for me, she looked me dead in the eyes. It was a challenge, but for the first time, I felt there was some confidence in her stare as well. Confidence in me. Where to? Dolores asked. Myself, Dagger, and Crank will follow your lead. I looked around at my friends and new acquaintances, all trying to save the world. Russia. That's where Sharon's going. Dolores nodded and stepped back. I'll set the destination. We'll drop the first team off at China, and then we'll accompany you to Russia. Get yourselves ready. It won't be a long stop. Dolores shut herself in the cockpit with Dagger. Who will be going to Beijing with me? Matron asked, pulling a notepad and pen from her pocket. I'll need contact details for emergencies. I'll go with you, Wong said. The Aetherites have contacts there. The Aetherites? How do we know you're going to get the job done? A children of Gaia asked snidely, clearly still distrustful of the Aetherites. I'll go with them, Chase interrupted, raising a hand. Oh? Even the odds, he shrugged. No. What evens the odds is me going with the freaks of Gaia, Satine sighed, winking at Chase. Are we set? Anyone else want to swap teams? Petrus, you were keen for Russia, I muttered and nodded. Etienne? Sharon? Where do you two see yourself? Russia with you, Sharon answered instantly. I know Moscow some. I'll head to Beijing, Etienne shrugged. I can be useful there and work with Chase to decode Dad's diary. So we're set, Crank said, coming forward. I'll let Miss Montague know the plan. Take a seat. We're in for a bumpy ride for the next hour or so. Mr. Crank is correct, teacher. The wind speeds would necessitate all passengers be seated and strapped in. We'll sit with Sharon. Everyone settled into their respective chairs and I sat next to Sharon. I bumped her shoulders lightly. You coming with me to Moscow, huh? Seems like, she sighed. It's been years since I've been back there. Kind of avoided it, to be honest. Suddenly, the plane descended sharply and then climbed again, causing my heart to jump. Sharon grabbed my arm to keep steady. Still not used to all this flying, she admitted sheepishly. I'm not used to Dolores flying, I muttered. The turbulence evened out eventually and I kept breathing. I trusted Dolores, but I'd never ever seen her drive until a week ago. What brought you there in the first place? I asked, frowning. As far as I knew, Sharon's never been anywhere apart from Australia and Peru. The same thing that usually happens when you're young and stupid, she sighed. Love. Not that it lasted. At least it can be of some use to us now. Honestly, I thought you would check out, I admitted. I thought you'd head home and let this be the end, with Santiago dead and all. She shrugged, leaning back. I guess I just wanted to see it done. I can understand that. Teacher, I require charging. I'm feeling very tired. I chuckled. Emoticons don't feel tired, but alright. Hey, hold on. Good night, little calculator, Sharon called. I rummaged in my bag until I found Moti's charger and plugged it in at the end of the seat Sharon and I were on. Teacher, will I dream if I sleep? Only if you want to, I suppose. That's an interesting device you have there, Chase called, staring at Moti. He was sitting closely to Satine, a little too close if their colleagues' death stares were a hint. While the rest of the Aetherites and the children of Gaia seemed to consider each other as arch nemesis, Chase and Satine were chatting easily and flirting openly. Moti has its quirks, I admitted, shifting my jacket so that Moti was covered. I was getting sick of people staring at my emoticon with hungry eyes. You can say that again, Satine murmured, leaning to the side in an attempt to peek behind my jacket. Satine and Chase were sharing a meaningful look before leaning toward each other and whispering, resuming their private conversation. When the turbulence finally settled, I stood and moved around the cabin, meeting the people I didn't know and reacquainting myself with the ones that I did. At the front of the plane I found Crank, looking greener than everyone else. You alright? He straightened, putting on a tough face. Of course, he answered gruffly. I've flown a lot, you know. It's not like I'm afraid or nothing. He's afraid of flying, Dagger stated in a no-nonsense manner. As she walked out of the cockpit, she handed Crank a cup of what looked like hot tea, and he sank grumpily back into his chair. What about you? What are you afraid of? I asked Dagger. A job not well done, she said, with warning in her voice. Miss Montague trusts you, and I'll be very upset if this comes to nothing. Seems like you're very loyal to her. Well, she's the one that employs us, she answered honestly, settling down next to Crank. He grumbled and pulled his feet up and leaned his chin on his knees. Technically the company does that, I noted, but it seems like you and Crank are Dolores' go-to people. More than that, Dagger shrugged. We answer to her, yes. However, Dolores has also gotten us out of some pretty dicey situations without questioning us. You owe her, I muttered, understanding. Yes, Dagger sighed, looking at Crank. We owe her. Dolores opened the cockpit door and motioned for Dagger to join her. I leaned in the doorway while Dagger sat in the co-pilot seat. How's everything up here, I asked, looking at the glowing dashboard. This baby nearly flies itself, Dolores admired. Top of the range. Everything's electronic. I could turn the lights out in the cabin from here if I wanted. Nothing but the best for the company, I murmured, looking out the window to the clouds below us. Nothing but the best for us, Dolores corrected, considering the company has blacklisted us all. Sure, that'll never come back to bite us at all, I muttered. Dolores gave me a glare, and I turned around to leave. Wait, your motorcon, Dolores called. I think you should leave it with me. I'd like to take a closer look at its software. Alright, we're going to wrap this one up here because we're out of time for today. But we are continuing. Now we're heading to Russia, I guess? I thought we were heading to America. Didn't quite happen, so now we're heading to Russia. Cool. And everybody's back again. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.